How's everybody doing today? My name is Simon Rosenberg, this is Gene Ginsberg, and welcome to Marketing Success in Under 10 Minutes. We have a phenomenal show for you guys today. Gene, how are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you so much, Stephen. I actually just did a webinar earlier today. I'm pretty pumped about that, and it went really well.
Cool.
So, yeah, I've been getting more into webinars lately, but this is not the topic of our show today, even though webinars
We're not talking about webinars today?
What's that?
Okay. I said we're not talking about webinars.
We're not talking about
today.
webinars. We can talk about webinars in another show, in another episode of the show, absolutely. I think there's a lot to be said about webinars. But what I want to talk about today is a book that I recently read, and the book is called Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And if you're not familiar with who Simon is, and Stephen, are you familiar with him?
Oh, yeah. I love
great.
him.
Well, then you were going to add so much value to this conversation that we're going to have today.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Have you read the book?
No,
okay.
I've not
Well,
read
I
the
would
book.
highly recommend reading the book. And the book just ties in really well with entrepreneurship. And I will talk a little bit about how his book ties into entrepreneurship and companies. And of course, this is a topic of conversation that we talk about quite a bit in this show. So the book again is called Start With Why, and Simon has been around for a while. I think he's written a number of best-selling books. I'm not familiar with his other books outside of Start With Why. I did get his other book, Find Your Why, which is kind of the sequel to Start With Why. I haven't started reading it yet, but I already bought it, and it's on my list of books to read, probably the next one that I'm going to be reading since now I'm done with Start With Why. But Start With Why, I think, is so beneficial for any entrepreneur to read. And the reason is, I can speak from my own experience. As you know, and if the audiences don't know, I have a digital agency, and I've been working with private clients for a long time. And most of the time when I engage with a private client, is that most of them don't know why their business is around, and it becomes a problem for someone like me, like a digital marketing agency or a consultant. Is how do you market a company that doesn't know who they are? And this book, Start With Why, is really all about that. Why does a company exist? I mean, they do talk about other things, but primarily the focus is corporations or companies or businesses or entrepreneurs. And most of the time, when we start a company, we're super excited and we have a vision. Even the vision might not be clear, but we know we want to be an entrepreneur. But then over a period of time, this why we started kind of starts to get fuzzy, and we get really into the business, and we start hiring people and creating processes, and all of these things are important. But then the reason why we started the business starts to get fuzzy, and that's what the book is really all about. And the first thing that he talks about is what he calls carrots and sticks, and how companies have really become, have been using a way to what he calls manipulation versus inspiration. So he provides a lot of examples on what inspiration is, and I'll share that. But a lot of times what he talks about is companies, because they don't know why they exist or what their values are, they start to manipulate the market. And so they start using things like price, lowering the price, and fear and peer pressure, and create, saying that their product is novel. But these are all what he calls manipulations, or these fear tactics in order to get people to buy. But instead of just creating a transaction where you're getting the person to buy because of a fear or because of a lower price point, he talks about creating loyalty and creating inspiration. And a lot of the things, I know I've been kind of going on, but I'll just provide some examples, and then of course I want you to share your opinion on this, Stephen. But he talks a lot about a few companies out there, companies like Apple, which I know, Stephen, you're very familiar with as an Apple user. He talks about Harley Davidson. He talks about Starbucks, and he also talks about what not to do. And one of the companies he provides an example is actually Walmart. So, Stephen, what are, and I can kind of share some more information after.
I thought he did a great job, his example of TiVo.
Yes.
I don't know if he talks about that
He does.
in
He
the
does
book.
talk about TiVo in his book. And I can share a little bit about what he talks about TiVo, but basically his whole thing is that TiVo was like a really innovative and interesting concept, but they never really shared why people should use it. And they came out, of the gate, they're like, oh, this is such a great product, we're going to get such amazing adaptation of the product and use of the product, but after so many years, people still are not sure why TiVo didn't really explain why they exist, and so that's why they didn't get a lot of usership from, for people to come to TiVo and actually use their product. So he does talk about that, but I know I've been, we're already 5 minutes in, and I wanted to see, Stephen, what your thoughts are on starting with why and Simon Sinek in general.
Yeah, so I really like him. I have not read the book specifically, but I've definitely done my research on Simon and have watched a lot of his different videos. I think his debut claim to fame was this, it was a TED Talk, I think it was.
Yep, I think so.
And he explained the who, what, why, and he sort of draws out these 3 circles, and that was such a huge connection for me. The way that he explained that is that, all companies know who they are. They all know, why. They
all know how, but they don't know the why. Yep.
Right. Yeah. And so I just thought that was so interesting as he goes through these different examples, like you say, of the people that have done it right and the people that have done it wrong, and why they've done it wrong. And you can see that they've kind of failed because of that. And I just think that he is really a great storyteller. I think Simon has done a really phenomenal job of breaking things down in such an elementary way for just about anybody to understand. Just the way that he talks and the way that he sort of goes through these different examples and why it really is so important to find that purpose and to find that why before you go off and try to highlight these other things, because at the end of the day, all companies are going to have similar things, but if you focus on, these little details, people are usually pretty turned off by that unless you can really communicate first why your purpose is and, why is that important. So I just think that, he, without reading the book, I would recommend people either looking into him or reading his book or whatever it is.
He has a YouTube channel, and I think his TED Talk is on the YouTube channel, or you can just search on YouTube for his name, and I'm sure I've searched for it, and there's a lot of things that come up, and his speeches come up. So absolutely, yeah, either look into his videos or look into the book. And I just wanted to provide, I know we have a couple more minutes, but I wanted to provide more of I know this is kind of abstract for companies, although it shouldn't be, but I also wanted to share, okay, well, how do you do that, right? Like, if you're an entrepreneur or a small business and you're watching this video and you're like, well, that's great, but what do I do now? So I can provide a couple of exercises, or an exercise that I do with my clients, because when I onboard a new client, one of the things that we do talk about is the why, and one of the things that we specifically talk about is core values, because that really becomes the why your company exists. And it's, for me, it's important because in order to understand and market this company, we have to understand why it exists and what are its core values. And so we have an exercise where we come together with the owner of the business or the CEO and then the management team, so this would be like C or V level positions, and we sit in a room for a couple hours and we all put together these points that we think would be great as to explaining what the core values of the company are. And then the idea is to narrow them down to 3 to 7 core values that then we would share with the company, and then that we would share also externally to the prospects, to the customers, so that everybody knows and everybody understands what the core value of what the core values of the company is. And some of the examples, these are not my examples, but these are examples of core values that I have found. So, for example, a wealth strategies company, their core values are clients' needs first, always, a complete wow experience, a special place to be, and cutting-edge knowledge, we are the experts. A company that offers soup, for lunch and things like that. So their core values is action-oriented, can-do attitude, no jerks, open and honest, and passion for the brand. So these are just some examples that I have found for companies' core values, companies' core values. And this is a good exercise for any company who's watching this video to get started.
Excellent. Well, this is a really great topic, and I hope a lot of people got some value out of it. Anything else you want to add?
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for watching. We hope you'll continue to get involved and join us as we help you find success in your entrepreneurial journey. Please follow, like, and share with others who will find this beneficial. We'll see you on the next episode of Marketing Success in Under 10 Minutes with Stephen and Jean.